Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Counterpoints podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Everett Stevenson, joined by my other co-hosts.
Hey everybody, I am Samantha Adams, another co-host.
Hey everybody, my name is Malik Foster, your last and final co-host for the Cowboys podcast, and we have a good topic today for you guys. Today, we will be discussing how third-party influences have an impact on the Black community and become a hindrance to further progress. I think it'll be pretty interesting for us to discuss that. And the reason why we're discussing that is because it's a lot of infighting going on in the Black community, especially from a relationship perspective. There's also issues with, I guess you could say, Black Americans trying to separate themselves from other Black groups. So there's a lot of different things going on around here in the Black community and the Black world here in the United States, and we kind of just want to clarify some things. So one of the first things I wanted to bring up is the government, right? And the aspect that I feel like a lot of Black people use and abuse is governmental assistance, right? I'm not saying Black people abuse it the most out of any group, but I do feel like it is a situation where I do think Black people need to uh, uh, wane off that. And the reason why is due to historical precedent. When Black people didn't have such a crux, they were able to prosper financially a lot better. Men and women were doing a lot better, and when you compare the relative stats to today. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like we need to wane off some of these governmental assistance programs, SNAP, um, uh,
Well,
the subsidized housing, and other programs that I feel like hinders progress and prevents prosperity. What are you gonna say? You can jump in.
yeah, definitely. I feel like there's also a point when we look at some of the things that you stated in regards to the different times and how things were, in particular when people weren't able to receive government assistance. Another thing that we can say too that kind of affected the ability of others to be able to live a better life. And I want to acknowledge the fact that you're correct in the sense that they weren't necessarily looking for maybe government assistance to help in certain situations, because you would have to lean on working within your own community to make something of yourself and to be able to make something for your family. But I do think that also a factor in that is the fact that, inflation wasn't what it is today, as well as the strength of the dollar was a little bit stronger than it was in past. So I think it would have been a little bit, not, by no means am I saying it easier, but I think that the people's ability to make things stretch a little bit further was a little bit stronger back in the day than it is today. And it's not no excuse that I'm feeling like I'm trying to say that by all means that, yeah, it's okay. But I feel like to be more specific in people that we're referencing when we talk about abusing the system, would be those who choose not to try to wing themselves from it and to use it as a stepping stone, but choose to try to use it um as a lifelong type of guy, and it requires it, which in turn they don't necessarily look to try to better themselves because they feel as though this is the best that life has to offer. And I think, like, speaking from a side of the game where you look at it and you can say, well, actually, when you realize you being able to live the life that you would like to live and try to be able to make things happen the way that you would like to on your own, that's a more richer life than necessarily having to live by the guidelines and the structures of government requirements. So that's something I wanted to kind of add on to that topic.
Yeah. Well, if you just 1 second, I just wanted to give E a little bit of pushback on what he was saying about like the inflation issue and the situations that were going on back then that made Black people a little closer together. And I was gonna say, well, there was other issues going on too during those times as well. You had Great Depression, that was a financial issue, segregation, separate but equal. That's a financial issue. And, and what we have today and what we had back then, I would say was a big impacting factor was the family units were tighter and stronger. Black people used to be the most married group. So that to me is a big distinction to what's going on today. And then we have certain situations that was introduced to the community, like a lot arresting of a lot of Black people, the war on drugs that helped drugs being infiltrated in the community, other stuff, and the judicial and legislative systems that kept Black men and Black women from being together and breaking up the homes in that way. So I think those are some factors that hindered prosperity and progress as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to do was offer a breakdown about government assistance. So I found it's from pewresearch.org, where it provides that 44.6% of adults are SNAP. I'm sorry, and this is in America. 44.6% of the people that receive SNAP benefits. I'm sorry, non-Hispanic white people. That's regular Caucasian, everyday run-of-the-mill Caucasian person. They account for 44.6% of SNAP recipients. And 31.5% of them have children. And that was back in 2020. About 27% of both adult and child recipients were Black, and Hispanic people account for about 21.9% as far as the adults are concerned, and 35.8% for children. And so the reason why I read that stat is because first and foremost, I want to talk about the historical aspects of all of it as it relates to Black people. We've talked about this many times and how the government has intervened into the Black family by tearing it apart, right? In part because the mass incarceration of Black men, tearing families apart. But then the other side to that is creating government assistance that Black women will then rely on because that man is no longer in the home. One of the downfalls to that is because she feels as though she doesn't need him because she's getting by on her own with the assistance of the government. And there's a small percentage of those people who don't rely on it just for assistance. They rely on it as if it's a part of their lives, right? Like they rely on it to a degree where it is a necessity in their life, not because they're trying to do anything to grow past it, not have to use it anymore, things like that. They lean on it like it's a job, right? And so when you're looking at that, that can become problematic for our community. They're bucking the system to a degree, right? Because the purpose is for it to only be temporary. But people have become so dependent on it. It's not necessarily that they're just relying on it. They become dependent on it. And that right there can become an issue because of the negative impact that it has on the Black family. And so I definitely wanted to point that out. Black women obviously are the ones that get it more than Black men. I think Black men don't really look to tap into those resources as much as Black women do. More so because Black men are self-subservient, right? They will go out and get it. And Black women just historically prefer to be, taken care of. Also, too, it's harder as a single Black mother with children, right? Like you have kids, you got to work, you got to do all of these things. And then being at the bottom of the financial totem pole, right? You're already not making as much money as your white counterparts, your Hispanic, or even your Asian counterparts. And so it creates a space for them to have to rely on those things, especially when you don't have all of the qualifications. It may be difficult for you to go to school. Some things are just hard for some people, and that's the purpose that it serves, is to help those people that need it. But when you have people out here that are not even trying to do anything to better themselves, not trying to get a job, not trying to do anything just to rely and depend on the system, that's where it becomes a problem, because where does a Black man fit in? You know what I mean? Especially, too, if he goes to jail, right? Because Black men have that access. They do allow they encourage Black men when they're getting out of prison to go apply for food stamps. you don't qualify for food stamps if you've been convicted of certain crimes. I think, and I could be wrong, I think it might be like something like fraud or drugs, which is also an issue, right? Because so many Black men have been convicted of drug crimes. So, other than that, aside from that, Black men have the same access as women. It's just, typically they don't necessarily tap into those things. And some Black men will rely on that Black woman to go get those resources, and they will depend on that woman as she depends on the system. And so all of that is a trickle down effect. And what it does is it continues to perpetuate the demise of the Black family. So I just wanted to go ahead and mention that.
No, I think you guys both have been touching on a couple things that also hurts within like the community as far as family structure and as far as building up a community that has political strength. It also has strength within the ability to protect itself. Like we mentioned, the disproportionate rate in which some Black men have had to deal with law enforcement in the judicial system. You guys can look at how we all know there are situations where we see people who can come from two different backgrounds and be charged essentially with around the same crime, and it could turn out a lot differently for each individual. One person may end up having to go to jail and serve time. Another person may end up getting transferred over to a drug program that looks to offer them no type of record or no anything, you know what I'm saying, and they just diverted and receive certain resources. So I think that that's a factor that we have to look at when we look at how things happen, and I think that doesn't just happen within the judicial system. Sometimes we've seen that also happen within the schooling. Two kids can get in trouble for the same exact thing. One might get suspended, whereas the other might have in-school suspension. One may just, have a, detention for lunch, and the other one may have to, be expelled from a school. So there's ways that situations get handled differently all the time, and those things can also play a factor into the confidence of the man, and them understanding how they want to go out in society, because they may feel like they know that they're going to catch the rawest of both deals. Their ability to move forward and having trust in certain systems and trust in certain beliefs, that they can use the skills that they may acquire to actually have a fair chance out here in society. And all of those things, I think, also factor into why guys may ultimately look to choose to try to move through women or the government if they feel like they can get access to those type of systems.
Yeah, you touched on a good point, and I kind of alluded to it before about, the prison system, right? The jail system, and removing the Black male from the home. We've talked about this many, many times. And the minute you remove the Black male from the home is the moment your home becomes unstable. Your Black family home becomes unstable, because, the man being in the home, statistics have shown that children even thrive better when the father is home. And so, it's important to recognize that when the father is removed from the home, it becomes a lot more challenging for that family to thrive. But, you saw something kind of like how Malik was talking about earlier, how back in the day, you had much higher marriage rate amongst Black people. And what you also saw then is children thriving at a higher rate as well. And so, when you're talking about the Black family and how it grows, thrives, and flourishes, you have to talk about all the pieces of that puzzle and how you get there. So when you're looking at crime, it's not necessarily just the fact that Black men are arrested at a higher rate than any other race of people, but it's also the disproportionate sentencing that takes place. It's also the disproportionate bail because a lot of times people don't talk about bail. Bail is such an issue because if somebody is already, on the poverty line or below the poverty line, missing a day of work could completely devastate his household, right? He could lose everything from missing a day or two at work. So if he's arrested and the bond is set or the bail is set at a really high rate and they can't get out, they lose that job. They lose that job, they lose their home, they can't eat, they can't take care of their family. Being a criminal defense attorney, I can tell you firsthand that I've had several clients that has happened to because they just couldn't afford bond. Even going through a bonding company, don't let it be a cash bond, but if you go through a bonding company, that's only a percentage of the bond and they still can't afford that. And I think, and sometimes it's for very, very minor crimes, but you may have somebody else who's charged with the exact same thing who may have gotten a signature bond where they just consign themselves out. And so it's very disproportionate, and there really needs to be some sort of a streamline to that because of the negative impact it has on all these Black people, especially Black men, when you're talking about the judicial system. Also, too, with schools, just like you said, they have the school to prison pipeline, where they teach you pretty much how to behave because you're all moving in this system like herd animals. And they move you through the system to a point where they make it difficult for especially our Black boys, because if a Black boy is too rambunctious, now all of a sudden he has some sort of a learning disability. He's ADHD, he can't sit still, or maybe how about you're not stimulating him enough, right? Sometimes we have to think about that. You have to think about whether or not that child is being edified enough rather than just assuming they have a learning disability, right? Or a mental health issue, right? And what they do is they do all this, it frustrates the child and then it increases the dropout rate. So, all of these things go hand in hand, and a lot of times they can be overlooked because we're just looking at, oh, okay, it is what it is. And it's not, it is what it is. Sometimes these systems are created in a way or set up in a way for Black folks to fail.
Yeah, I wanted to get in here and talk about some a few things like, you know, some of the things go hand in hand, right? Like, yeah, on the surface, you'll say the opportunities for Black men are similar in terms of these governmental assistance and programs, but there's other factors, like you mentioned. If you have some sort of criminal background, some felony stuff like that, drug-related offenses, you're ineligible for those programs. Two, you can't be a pregnant man, so that's impossible. So there's some things that men can't do, or Black men specifically can't do, or a lot of Black men, like I think, what is it, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 Black men have like had some experience with jail time, prison, or felony, something like that. The rate is high, so you're eliminating a good percentage right there. And then of course the other percentage are, when a certain amount of men, single Black men are making a certain amount of money, they're not going to be eligible as well. So, like really, it's only like 1/4 of that is available to actually do it. And like you said, Sam, a lot of men have this pride or ego, and society kind of, pushes men in general, like, hey, you don't want to be the bottom of the barrel because you usually get bottom of the barrel things. You can't live the lifestyle you want, and most men don't want to say, hey, I want to be last, I want to be at the bottom, very competitive. So that's where I kind of agree with you, but also, there's other things hindering those opportunities as well. Not just the fact that, a man can't apply, because I'm just saying, like, myself, other people's stories when they try to apply for some assistance, you get,
I want to push back just a little bit on something that you just said.
So that's one of the things I wanted to talk
about. I just want to push back really quickly. A lot of those things that you talked about, those outliers, right? Not necessarily the exceptions, but the restrictions, those are also apply to women. It's not necessarily that it only applies to men. Yes, food stamps, for example. If you are in college, the only way you can get food stamps is if you are pregnant or you got a baby. Now, if you have a man that has a baby that's applying for food stamps, he may be eligible before the female that doesn't have any children. You see what I'm saying? So it's still they still have that access. It's just that the circumstances may be different, right? And so I definitely wanted to add a little pushback to that, because those restrictions definitely can apply to women as well. So it's
Well,
just that I just believe that women are more inclined to go and apply for those benefits than men are.
Yeah, I was just
Right.
making the point that the outside factors, like even with the different circumstances, those outside factors play a role in restricting you know black men even further. Like not just the peer pressure, the society, the mass incarceration, like you said, stuff like that's not happening to black women on uh a national scale, so to speak, as bad as black men, right? So that's really what I wanted to say. I wanted to segue us into some of the, unless you wanted to add on to this. E.
I did. I did. Thank
Okay,
you.
go
I
ahead.
just needed y'all to stop talking. No, I'm messing with y'all. But yeah,
So,
no, I think another factor that we have to look into that, Malik, is I think you kind of giving guys a lot of credit, which I feel like, again, we from a kind of, and I hate to be like that guy, right? Like we're from a different generation because like it's still young enough to like what he say, know better, but old enough to not, you know what I mean? Old enough to know better and young enough to not give up. And it's like, I think when we look at today's society in some senses, and especially like younger generations, sometimes people don't have the same motivational factors, like you said, for a lot of people, caring about what someone has to say and what society may look at you and think of you used to be enough to make people feel like, hey, you know what? I don't want to be shamed. I don't want to be looked down at. I don't want to be, but in a society in which you have I should be able to do what I want. Like, no one should be able to judge me. I shouldn't really care about what others think about me. My opinion matters most of overall, which in some essence, yes, that is very much true. But I think it also, like, in order for there to be order and structure in society, there has to be some level of understanding that where we say, hey, certain things just aren't allowed for the greater good. And I think a lot of people are like looking at these, especially a lot of men sometimes in these situations are looking at society and being like, you know what, hey, it's cool, it is what it is, and because they haven't been taught to take pride in themselves, to take pride in their work, to take pride in everything that they do, to to have a certain sense of self, a certain understanding of who you are, and a certain learning of, you know what I'm saying, what where you come from. That's what that gives them that sense of pride. And I think that's something that like hinders a lot of men in today's society sometimes, because they're just kind of nonchalant, real go with the flow, real we'll see how it goes type. You know what I'm saying? And not like I'm gonna make it happen. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna do what I need to do. It's just like, oh, if it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't, And those are like, that's an attitude I think that also has to die in order for us to continue to, like, have some of the best of society, having some of the best of our community. There has to be that sense of like, I am somebody, I know I'm going to be somebody, and I'm going to make sure that I uphold myself as such. So I guess that's part of one of my solutions for what we can see as a change. I think that also kind of plays a role in, looking at individuals, like we said, weaning off of maybe government assistance. Of course, like we said, if you're someone who needs it and you have to incorporate it in your lifestyle because you're an 80-year-old woman, you have gave your society, your due to society, you've worked, you put in your time, and we've all agreed that at your age you should be able to, if you were not able to have some type of retirement plan in place, be able to have some type of assistance at this time, whatever the case may be. That's fine, versus an individual who may be able-bodied but looks to try to just live within the confinements of what they have. I think that's something where it's like, hey, you need to do a little bit more. But we also can talk about, another factor that I think that also pushes against the community in itself, And that's like we were saying earlier, or we alluded to, the opposite side of, like you said, having government assistance is the assistance of being able to make it for yourself. And I think that one of the problems that we look at sometimes within that is this whole issue of, well, if I got it on my own, I can do it by myself. And that's kind of like the wrong way for us to think of it. And particularly, I think that's more of like some of our women's type of mindset. Of course, like Sam mentioned, like for the guys, it's kind of like a thought process of, okay, hey, as a man, you want to take pride in saying that, what, you can hold your own, you can do things by yourself, you don't necessarily need that assistance. And I think for some women, you know what I'm saying, they want to take that pride in knowing that they can do those same things by themselves as well. However, I do think that the problem that we're running into is because we have so many men who aren't necessarily able to have themselves in together. And we do have so many, women who are able to make it in corporate America, but they're just not feeling like, hey, if guys aren't, to their level or where they're at, I'll just do it on my own. And there is no thought of, hey, it's better for us to work together, bring our resources together and try to make, a strong family.
But
But
a lot of men do have it together. Like that's a myth. I mean, it depends on what metric you're using. Yeah, like maybe marrying black women and keeping the black families together. Yeah, a lot of black men don't have that together, but that takes two. But if we're talking about from a financial aspect, they have it more together than black women, right? And that's evidence. We have evidence from that. But I also want to bring up corporations, right? Because corporations play a role here, not just in the hiring and firing of black men and women, but also backing media companies. I really want to talk about the media companies when I'm talking about corporations because they play a big role. So when they're trying to promote stuff, they're always trying to promote a lot of interracial stuff. They're not trying to promote as much black family units. You can see it in the movies, right? A black woman is always with um, a non-black male. Let's put it like that, or maybe a lot of white savior stuff going on. So it's a lot of issues like that they're trying to, put in the mind that helps create and promotes more infighting between black men and black women and further damages the relationship we have amongst each other, which I think is very important for us to build that back up to where we need to be as a community, right? So I think that's one of the things that corporations do. Besides, the hiring, firing, where, some people feel like, oh, I don't need a man, I don't need a woman, I don't need anybody. I got this job making this money. I can just pay for things that I need, right? Besides that aspect of it, I think that part is an underrated part in hindering, the prosperity of the black community, in my humble opinion. Do y'all guys want to jump in on that little aspect?
Um, so I want to touch on something that both of y'all said. Number one, yeah, I agree to a degree about the quote unquote independent woman syndrome, right? It's okay, I'm out here getting it. I'm out here doing this thing. What do I need a man for? Or I can do bad by myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need some man to bring me down. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right? Um, I think I think that these two things go hand in hand, right? When you're talking about corporations and black men elevating and doing all of that, doing all the things that they need to do to be in a better financial situation, I think a lot of times those men are overlooked, right? If they're not overlooked, maybe they've already married somebody else. Maybe they've married somebody that's younger. You know what I mean? Than that independent woman who's been working on her career for however long, right? Those could be some of the factors, right? But at the same time, what it also could be is that Black people in general, not individually, but in general, have a crab in a barrel a way of operating. And that's even amongst men and women, right? So it's like, I want to see you do good, but I don't want you to do better than me, right? So I'm going to do what I can do to not edify you, to not help you grow, to not help you climb out of that barrel. And the problem with that is it stunts the growth of Black people and it separates them. That's where that separation comes from. Excuse me. And so, we have to be more mindful, because when you look at other races of people, I think like people can try to blame it on slavery, but the truth of the matter is, the Jewish people are a good example. They went through a horrible, horrible, horrible historical experience, right? That was Holocaust, where it was genocide, right? And in that genocide, once they came out of World War II, they've done nothing but help support one another. And that's one of the reasons why, as a whole, Jewish people typically flourish better financially. If you want to compare them to Native Americans, although Native Americans are having a really, really, really rough time, one thing about Native Americans is they are very unified, right? So when you start talking about things like protecting their land and things like that, that's where you see solidarity. And with Black people, you only see solidarity with Black people when something happens, right? Maybe a police officer killed somebody, maybe somebody did something that was racist. That's the only time you ever see it. It has to be some form of inequality or inequity present to really see Black folks really stand for one another. And I think society, maybe, I could blame the government, I can blame a lot of people, but one of the problems that we have is others don't want to see us grow. So because others don't want to see us grow, in some innate way, we find a way to pull each other down. And we got to just do better, And so when you talk about solutions, right? I think one of the solutions to that is, number one, first identifying the problems, right? Recognizing that they exist, accepting the fact that they exist, and finding ways to continue to keep each other educated, right? And support one another. Right here on this podcast, every single month, we advertise a Black business for no money. We do it just so, these people can get their names out there, regardless if it only reaches 2 people or if it reaches 200 or 2,000 or whatever. At the end of the day, the goal is to help edify and grow, help other people grow, other Black businesses grow. Why? Because we believe that unity is one of the keys to growth. Right. I saw a clip, I can't remember who it was that was making the statement, but it was like, Black people are constantly working extra hard to try to open a door that we already have the keys to, right? The reason why we struggle to open the door is because we're not unified as a people. And we really need to find ways to be unified instead of pulling each other down. Because think about it. Every single one of us Black folks have learned from our parents, our grandparents, our aunties, and our uncles that you got to work 10 times harder to get, the bare minimum. And so, although that may be true, maybe we wouldn't have to work 10 times harder if we worked together more. So I just wanted to put that out there as a potential solution, and to find ways to support your brother and sister as opposed to finding ways to tear them down. Because although things can be competitive, it doesn't hurt to say, hey, I heard about this place that's hiring over here, or I heard about a place where you can get this opportunity over here, or hey, there's going to be a pop-up shop over at this spot. Maybe you want to go ahead and put your small business in this pop-up shop. Maybe it'll earn you some money and some exposure. There's nothing wrong with trying to find ways to help uplift and help uplift other Black people and help them to grow.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sam. I think, us as the Black community, we need to take a look at a few things. We need to take a look at, our relationships amongst each other. We need to take a look at the legislation, right? Because that has been damaging and a hindrance to us being prosperous. And we also need to take a look at, the corporations and the media promoting negative imagery, because image is very important. And we need to combat that and fight that and change that through promoting our own media, backing financially things that promote our interests, and also with legislation that assists us and our needs specifically, not just situation that is a catch-all that helps everybody because we end up getting the short end of the stick in most cases. And then from a political standpoint, fighting like those redlining issues, those other racist issues that we encounter, right? So I think we got to keep up the fight. It can't just be always up and down. We have to be on a steady, always fighting, you know, consistently, because I think that's the key, being consistent in what we're doing. And things can change because I know some people feel like things won't change, but I feel like if we're consistent enough in what we're trying to do in our efforts and stay together on one page, one agenda, I think we'll be able to achieve a level of success we haven't achieved in a long time. So that's what I would say about that as far as my solutions go. Um, so you could go ahead, close us out, E.
Yeah, so with me personally, I think that in addition to it being just um just um us working together, I think you have to understand that sometimes some individuals just may not be able to make it. As you know, like you said, there's never been a time in society where we were all able to get everybody on the same page. And so I think that it's important that we understand that again, everybody just won't be able to get on the train. Everybody just won't be able to catch it. So I think what you do is you build a community with those who do understand. You get the information out there for those who are seeking and looking. You guys try to get with like-minded individuals, and you guys work to try to benefit on the best of what you can for those who are kind of in agreement with the same type of stance that you have, whether that's politically, whether that's, you know what I'm saying, relationship wise, whether that also includes the way that we upbring our children, which is another topic that we could talk to on another day. But all of those things are important factors that kind of weigh into how we can help shape this community and bring about the type of change that we really needed to see, that we've been wanting to see from generations before and from ours. And so with that being said, though, I definitely want to go ahead and jump us into our last segment, which is our book of the month, which this book in particular is called Speeches That Changed the World by Simon Montefiore. Fiore. Pardon me. And this book just kind of gives different speeches that from different times, from great individuals, some of the more impactful speeches of the world. They have speeches from Dr. King, from Jesus, from Queen Elizabeth, to all other individuals within society. And our Black Business of the Month this month is CP Time Game and LLC. This is a gaming company that has created games, in particular the CP Time game, which is a game that kind of just asks you to list three. And then they have another one, which I think it's called Roll Call, in which they offer like questions about different movie things. So you guys who follow us on Wednesdays, we like to do game nights. You can be looking forward to us playing some of these games sometime soon on the air. But we wanted to definitely promote them. And with our motivational minute, I just wanted to say this is a simple one. We always used to say within our communities, each one reach one. And also, if you knew better, you'd do better. If you knew better, you do better. And those are quotes that have always been kind of said within the community. And I think it's also very important in today's time, because it's just like, that's the goal. That's what we come here every week to do. That's the type of people that we look to receive our influence from, our individuals who speaking about concepts that can help change society. Those are the forces that we kind of go through all of the contents to try to find and for us to discuss with you guys today. And then also, looking to just do better, to be better, and to grow and to become better. So that's our goal as we kind of present these shows and look to try to bring it around. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this week. You guys always know you can find us every Saturday here on Instagram, YouTube, pardon me. At around 1 p.m. we'll have our episodes posted. Then again, we go live every Wednesday at around 8 p.m. Please like, follow, subscribe. You know what I'm saying? Tell friends to tell about 10 friends to like, follow, and subscribe. Looking forward to continuously seeing you guys within the next year or so. Anybody else got anything that y'all want to add?
Yes, it's Wednesday at 8:30, excuse me, Eastern Standard Time, is when we do our What's Up Wednesday. Also, too, if you have a topic, excuse me, that you'd like to hear us talk about, please feel free to go ahead and DM us. And if you ever want to be on the show, go ahead and hit us up. Let us know. We would love to have you. Otherwise, all the rest of our stuff, you'll see at the very end. Excuse me, you'll see at the very end. So like E said, tell a friend to tell a friend, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. That's it.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate y'all. Take care. Have a blessed one. Happy holidays in advance. And that's all I got because my co-host said the rest. Peace.